The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Wednesday, September 11th. Hope everybody's been doing well. Man, it's been a few days here. This has definitely been the longest stretch that I've gone without releasing a podcast, so I do apologize for that. I needed to recharge a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I really did. I needed to recharge a little bit. And so I am recharged. All right, couple things today. First of all, it's September 11th. I did want to pay my respects and condolences to all the people that tragically were lost in the 9/11 incident. I can't even believe how long ago that was. That is insane. 23 years ago. Man, that time has gone by fast. But anyway, as we've talked, it was interesting. I was looking back at, over the past few days, I really was looking back at certain episodes. And honestly, I'm trying to figure out directionally again, maybe pivoting a little bit with things with this podcast. And I was looking at the episode I released last year, which I did it on 9/12, because I said, one day is not enough. And, that's probably what's going to happen today. There's going to be people posting about 9/11, although not as much. And I'll tell you why in a second. But people posting about 9/11, and then, tomorrow, everybody just goes back to life as normal. But I will tell you, the events of 9/11 definitely, they were more than meets the eye. And, there's a friend of mine that was a police officer at the Pentagon that day. And gosh, he and I were supposed to record an episode and we were supposed to release it today, but we never got around to it. But you know what? I'm going to do that with him and I'm going to release it because I think it'll be very, very interesting to hear from a police officer who was at the Pentagon on 9/11 and just hearing what they experienced. Because I will tell you, again, first and foremost, actually first, second, third, and fourth, all the people that lost their lives that day. That's the biggest tragedy of all. But man, that event really set into motion a series of things that, quite frankly, led to the invasion of Afghanistan, led to the invasion of Iraq, led to a 20-year forever war, led to, trillions of dollars being poured into that forever war, with the military-industrial complex, flourishing for 20 years on the backbone of, on the backbone of, we've got to find weapons of mass destruction. There never were any weapons of mass destruction. All of that stuff that, quite frankly, nobody questioned back then. But I think that times have changed and the media's changed, the access to information, social media, investigative journalism. Like I've talked before, I do think what's taken place in Gaza has woken up a lot of people to a lot of things. And so I don't think people are going back to bed either. I really don't. I don't think people are going back to bed. And they're reopening things about 9/11. So anyway, I am going to have that podcast episode with my friend Todd. We'll get that done. We'll get that out. And, we'll try to sort of, analyze what took place that day. But regardless, deepest of condolences to all the families, the people that lost their lives. I want to say it was not in vain, but I don't know. It wasn't in vain, hopefully, but again, I don't think the truth has come out on that, and who knows if it ever will. Okay, so the reason why I don't really think it's going to be as prevalent today is because everybody's talking about last night's debate. And last night was the debate between Trump and Kamala Harris. And if you watched it, be curious to get your thoughts. I'd love your thoughts. If you did not watch it, that's funny. Actually, I would love your thoughts as to why you did not watch it as well. So if you care to share any of those, let me know. But, I think it was, I forget what episode last week, but I think I did say, I think Kamala's going to do better than expected. And she did. She really did. And so I'll give you my analysis on it. my overall analysis is, honestly, they just both, in my opinion, they were both terrible. I mean, they really were. I just thought it was another step backwards in terms of healing for the country. And really, I pin it on both of them. I really do. I'll get into some of the issues here in a second. But starting off with Trump, I mean, he started off much calmer, but man, she really got under his skin. She really did. She got under his skin. And I was having a chat with a friend of mine about it during the debate a few times. I will tell you, this is actually funny. What these debates are good for is getting in steps, because I watched it on the treadmill last night, and I'm looking at my stats for yesterday. I got 22,012 steps in total, 131 zone minutes. I traversed 9.97 miles and burned 3,201 calories. That's a lot. And I think during the debate in particular, I got almost 7,000, 8,000, actually, like 8,000 of those steps in during the debate. So do steps while you watch these debates. All right. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, I was chatting with a friend of mine during the debate. And, I'll say this. There's been a lot of talk today. I also wanted to wait a little bit on this episode instead of releasing it first thing in the morning, because I did want to see what the reactions were, and they were pretty much what I expected. But as far as David Muir and Lindsay, whatever, the moderators, I mean, again, they're getting attacked today on the Republican side, saying it was 3-on-1. They fact-checked President Trump several times. They never fact-checked her, never pushed back on things she said. And again, that is true. They did correct Trump a few times, and they definitely did not say anything pushing back to Kamala at all. I will say during the debate, I did applaud they were very calm, especially David Muir. He definitely had a very calm demeanor to him. Now, again, I think the people that today are saying it was 3-on-1 versus Trump, part of that is because, again, Trump didn't do well. If let's say he had crushed it last night, let's say it was a totally different guy, he stayed away from the stuff he normally goes at and focused completely on policy, and let's say just crushed it, I don't think anyone would have cared how the moderators were, because they would have been fired up about how Trump did. But he didn't crush it. And so again, that causes them to basically, I don't want to say look for an excuse, but in a way they are looking for an excuse. So I thought overall, I really thought they were fine. Again, I will admit, as I looked back and went back to a couple things this morning prior to recording this, they definitely pushed him harder than they pushed her. That's just a fact. They really did. But overall, I can't say they were terrible. Okay. And then overall with Kamala, she was definitely, man, she was in attack mode. She was definitely in attack mode, definitely more visceral than I expected. I did though see her trying to, this is the interesting part. She just tried to move on. We want to turn the page. She kept saying, turn the page. And so, really, when I look at that, I'm like, hey, listen, you've been the vice president for 3.5 years. And this was Trump's mistake. He should have spoken to the American people. He should have just completely spoken to the American people. And he should have been all into what's taken place in the past 3.5 years, because obviously it hasn't been good. And here's the thing. I mean, again, if you truly call a spade and rise above and take your emotions out of it, life is not better today, September 11th, 2024, than it was September 11th, 2019. I'm not going to say 2020, because that's when we were in the midst of COVID, and that completely takes that off the board. But September 11th, 2019, I mean, life wasn't bad. We had our arguments. Everyone hated his mean tweets, but again, we were not dealing with what we're dealing with now. Record inflation, 2 wars that are complete nonsense, the destruction of humanity in Gaza, and in Ukraine. I mean, I don't talk about Ukraine as much as I've talked about Gaza, but the death toll of Ukrainians is far more than the death toll in terms of Gaza. Gaza, I think 40,000 people have been said to have died. And then in Ukraine, I think that number is in the hundreds of thousands. I'll try to get that. Now, there are more soldiers that died in Ukraine, but still, death is death. So anyway, I think that Trump should have focused completely on just calmness and talking about life today versus life, when prior to COVID, when he was president. And then again, like I was saying about her, I mean, she did do well. I will tell you, she won over. I don't think Trump won over anybody that isn't already voting for him last night. I do think that she did. And then she also was helped. Taylor Swift came out after the debate and put out a big post on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. By the way, that was completely, in my opinion, part of the plan. She, for whatever reason, carries a lot of clout, especially among, maybe the Swifties, as they call it, or that generation. But that tweet or Instagram post that she put out, was reposted a gajillion times by a gajillion people. And so, basically her message was, after watching the debate, I'm throwing my endorsement behind, Kamala, like there was any question. But I think the timing of that was absolutely strategically done, and it was coordinated. I really do. I think it was coordinated. And so, like I said last week, I did think she was going to do well. And again, obviously not according to any Trump supporters or the right and Republicans, but according to, the average general consumer or person who isn't incredibly well versed on the inner workings of things, she won over voters last night. I do think she did. I think she did. I think she accomplished exactly what I said she was going to accomplish. Okay, let me talk about a couple specific areas. I'm not even going to necessarily go topic by topic, but I want to talk some themes. One big theme was she brought up Project 2025 several times throughout the night. This is, again, very strategic because Project 2025 has some crazy stuff in it. It also actually has some good stuff in it. I've read part of it. I reached out to those guys a few times now to try to get somebody from Project 2025 to come on, but I have not gotten a response. That's a little shady, actually. To me, it's kind of like, hey, if you guys are really something that Trump supports, you should be advocating for it. Now, again, as soon as she brought it up, Trump denied it. He absolutely denied, being a part of that. But it's not enough. The damage is done. People think that Project 2025 is his platform, and it's not his platform. But him and his team and all the right-wing pundits and all the right-wing talking heads, they don't do a good enough job of distancing themselves from it. And then here's the other thing. This is why the Republican Party is pretty dysfunctional. So the folks that are behind Project 2025, they're really hindering Trump right now. And so you would think if they were truly team players, and this is the Heritage Foundation, I believe, they would absolutely come out and say, hey, we want to set the record straight. This is not something that President Trump has endorsed. This is our plan. And we hope that once he wins office, he will sit with us to take our recommendations, something like that. But if they were really team players, they would distance themselves from Trump. But they're not, because they want it to look like this is Trump's plan. And that's just stupid because it is absolutely working against Trump. This Project 2025 is working against Trump. And the biggest problem with it is the thing is like 900 pages long. So nobody's going to actually read it and really dissect exactly what it says. So instead, you're going to listen to, the person who gives you the 60-second soundbite of what it said, and you're going to believe it, and then you're going to forward that on and basically take that as gospel. So the Project 2025 thing kept coming up. Another interesting thing that happened last night was they were talking about guns, and basically Trump said she's going to take away your guns, and then Kamala said both herself and Tim Walz are gun owners, so we're not going to take away your gun. I thought that was a slip. I'm very surprised she admitted that she's a gun owner. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm just surprised that she admitted that she's a gun owner. And I do think that is going to come back, and I think that's going to come back and haunt her a little bit. Another thing that came up a few different times, and again, I'm going to go back and find this, is, when they talk about the concept of fracking and basically mining of oil here in the United States, I absolutely remember Kamala being on record saying she's against fracking. And then last night she said she's absolutely not against fracking and for it. So, like I said, they both lied several times, and I don't even know if I guess you would call it lying, but they both told, what they want people to believe. And again, both of them, I'm telling you, both of them, really drove home the narratives that they wanted to drive home. And again, a perfect example with Kamala is you can't keep talking about Project 2025 if Trump literally says, hey, that's not mine. I don't have anything to do with that. I don't know those people. I don't know if he said it. I think he does know them, by the way. But again, he has copped up to saying that's not mine, but he hasn't done it strong enough. He just hasn't, because they keep absolutely bringing it up. Another thing that I did notice, which was a little bit surprising, was her body language was pretty aggressive, and it was pretty immature, actually. She non-verbally reacted more than I expected her to. That's something you kind of think Trump will do, but I think he's kind of gotten too tired to do the non-verbals. But her non-verbal reactions were pretty cringe throughout the night. So I thought she would be able to control herself better. The topic of abortion, let me see, actually. They talked about the economy. They talked about tariffs on other countries. They talked about abortion. They talked about immigration and border security. They talked about the weaponization of the Justice Department. They talked about fracking and buyback. They talked about the transfer of power on January 6th. So they actually talked about some good topics. And again, quite frankly, similar to the debate against President Biden, this should have been a slam dunk for Trump, because most of the topics that deal with present life are in the negative right now. They just are. They really just are. Life's a mess right now. They absolutely are. I will tell you, when they got into the topic of Gaza and Israel, that was just a nothing burger by both of them. Kamala repeats the same thing, literally the same phrase she does every single time, which basically says nothing. And then Trump basically says nothing. He absolutely does not, when he talks about that, he says that war would have never happened. That war would have never happened on my watch. He doesn't get into anything. They did ask specifically, what would you, I don't know if it was reprimand or it was something about Netanyahu, but anyway, neither one of them gave any type of remotely good answer in regards to that. In terms of Ukraine and Russia, again, similar analysis. I will say the numbers kind of blew me away. Trump said that we're in the Ukraine war for 250 billion, and then Europe's in for 150 billion. So how crazy is it that between all of these NATO countries, they've spent $400 billion on this war? And again, I'm going to do another episode getting more into that Russia-Ukraine war, and I'm going to bring in some interviews from Professor Jeffrey Sachs and then John Mearsheimer, two guys that I really like, because the more I've learned about that, and after listening and interviewing Professor Demetrius Flautas on one of the Deep Shallow Dive interviews, I've realized that war really is about NATO expansion and, quite frankly, NATO being the aggressor and basically poking Putin and putting troops on his red line and his entire country's red line, which was, the gigantic border with Ukraine. Do not try to bring Ukraine into NATO. Do not put troops there. And that's exactly what they did. And I liken that to if Russia was to ever bring troops on the Mexican border. Think about that. Think about what the U.S. reaction would be if Russia took an aggressive stance on thousands of miles of the United States border with Mexico. And basically that's what happened with NATO taking that stance on the Ukrainian border with Russia. So I am going to talk about that a little bit more. Let me see. I took notes on my phone while I was taking steps in. Anyway, I mean, overall, literally the only policy points made by either one of them during the night was Kamala Harris talking about giving a $50,000 tax deduction to small businesses, a $6,000 tax credit for parents when their child is born, and then a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. How crazy is that? We went through the entire debate, and basically the real tangible policy points were minimized to 3 numbers. That's it. That was all the policy that was talked. Anyway, that's it on the debate. I mean, again, I thought I can't say overall it was a nothing burger. If you asked me who won, I mean, honestly, I do think Kamala won. I will admit that. I do think that Kamala won. I think that she came off better. I should say it that way. It's not that she won. She came off better. And like I said, between what's taking place now with the media and the way they're spinning the debate, I think she will have gained voters from last night, whereas I don't think Trump picked up any people that were on the fence. And the people that were on the fence about him because of his personality, not because of his policies, because of his personality, they definitely were not brought into the fold. They definitely did not watch that and be like, oh, you know what? Okay, wow, okay, I'm okay with his personality. If anything, it probably, didn't change their opinion, or possibly even change their opinion a little bit more to the negative. And so because of that, I'm defining who won the debate by whom I think picked up voters, and I think that she's the one that basically picked up voters if either one of them did last night. I don't think he picked up any independents. All right, I want to switch gears real quick because I did want to talk about this because I thought it was a crazy situation. I don't know if you guys saw on Sunday before the kickoff of the NFL season in Miami wide receiver Tyreek Hill was pulled over by the cops. And man, it just turned into a crazy situation where they basically like put him down on the ground, and I don't think he got arrested because he ended up playing in the game and had a great game, actually, which is a credit to him to be able to have a great game after going through what he went through with the police. But I did want to talk about this really quick because, I watched the entire body cam footage video, and I wanted to kind of give my thoughts. One is, first of all, he's driving a $250,000 McLaren, which was gorgeous, a black McLaren. So like the fact that you're in Miami, you've got this guy driving a McLaren, which is, obviously an unbelievable car. I thought the police, how do you not know who Tyreek Hill is? Like when the cops pulled him over, I am ridiculously surprised that not one of them was like, oh shit, this is Tyreek Hill. Okay, let's kind of be chill about this. The situation went from like 0 to 100 in a second. And I will say Tyreek Hill was to blame for at least 50% of that because he was uncooperative. He really was. He wasn't rolling down the window. He, was... I don't know. Gosh, I haven't been pulled over by a cop in a while, knock on wood. But anytime I have been, I'm just incredibly polite. And I don't understand why he wouldn't have been, officer, I'm sorry. He said, why don't you have your seatbelt on? He didn't answer him. He pulled his window up and he has tinted windows on that McLaren. And then they opened the door. And again, it was like, he was combative with those guys. And so to me, I'm thinking, dude, you're on your way to playing a game. Like, why be combative? And by the way, at no point did he even say, hey, I'm Tyreek Hill. I play for the Dolphins. I'm on my way to the game. I'm sorry. Was I speeding? I apologize for that. Obviously, yes, you're welcome to write me a ticket. Here's my license. Here's my registration. I need to get to the stadium to play for a game. He was on his phone and he kept on saying, call Drew. He's talking about Drew Rosenhaus, his agent. So obviously he, was like, oh, get my agent, get my agent. It felt like Jerry Maguire situation. But I will say Tyreek Hill was a knucklehead. He just was. He was a knucklehead at the way he was with the cops. And then the cops were knuckleheads. I thought they were excessively aggressive. I did. I thought they could kind of been a little more chill during that entire, situation, especially because there were a lot of them. And then the other thing that not a lot of people are talking about, but two of his teammates pulled over because they were driving by and they pulled over. Calais Campbell, who is like a super great guy. He's like NFL humanitarian of the year. And by the way, the dude's like 6'5", 300 pounds. He's huge. And then another one of his teammates pulled over, and both of those guys are driving like Rolls Royces, like, sick cars. So what's amazing to me is these cops just kind of had no awareness. You've got three guys that collectively are driving $700,000 worth of automobiles, if not more, to be honest. So you obviously think to yourself, okay, who are these guys? Are they Dolphins players? Especially with Calais and the other dude, because they're big. And I mean, Tyreek Hill is jacked. So like, I'm very surprised they didn't realize what was going on. And so again, it became a situation that was unnecessary on both sides. And the reaction, once again, has just become a racial reaction. They profiled him because he was black. I don't really think that's the case. I think they profiled him because he was being an asshole. He really was. Tyreek Hill was being a dick. Like, he was not just, I don't even know why you would act like that. Like, if that's me, I would be cooperative because I want to get the hell out of there and get to the stadium. But then again, at the same time, I do think police officers need to be able to handle situations in a much more calm fashion. It's kind of like they turn into Trump at the debate. They just get angry. So like, they need to be calmer about things, especially in this situation. You're talking broad daylight, 2:00 in the afternoon, or I'm sorry, probably even earlier, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning, something like that. So anyway, I did want to talk about that. I thought that situation is something that needs to get, again, like this politics, you need to look at that from 30,000 feet and not from a purely black and white standpoint, not from a purely, oh, black guy, cops are being assholes, or black guy being unruly. You know what I mean? You can't look at it like that. You've got to like really look at the exact situation. And again, I do think Tyreek Hill could have absolutely handled it better. by the same token, I think the police officers could have handled it better. And I do think that they did not let Calais Campbell and the other gentleman that was his teammate, those guys were kind of diffusing things. I think they were the ones who were like, dude, that's Tyreek Hill. He plays for the Dolphins. We play for the Dolphins. We're on our way to a game. I don't know, man. It just seems like situations should not escalate the way they escalated. All right, everybody, that's it. Have a great day. Condolences and rest in peace to all those lost in 9/11. And we will talk to you soon.
The ending was terrific.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.